For 40 years, Sir Aldren Vale guarded a door that had never opened. For 39 of those years, the kingdom that gave him the order had no longer existed. Still, every morning he put on his armor. Every evening he sharpened his sword, and every night, before sleeping beside the cold stone walls of the ruined fortress, he checked the door one final time. Nothing had ever come through. Nothing had ever tried. Until the night someone knocked from the other side. 3 slow knocks. Aldren opened his eyes. Rain whispered through the broken ceiling of Caer Morath. Water ran down cracked pillars and gathered in shallow pools across the ancient floor. He sat beside a dying fire, motionless. Then came another knock. Once. Twice. 3 times. Aldren stood. His body was slower than it had been when he first received his command. His hair had turned gray. His hands had become rough and stiff. But he still remembered the words of his king. Guard this door. Let nothing pass. The order had been given 40 years ago during the final days of the Ashen Siege. Aldren had been 23 then, young enough to believe that obedience and honor were the same thing. He lifted his sword and approached the door. It stood beneath the fortress, at the end of a great underground hall built long before the kingdom of Edrenor. No one knew who had made it. The door had no handle, no hinges, only a smooth surface of black stone covered with circles and unfamiliar symbols. Aldren had stared at those symbols for most of his life. That night, for the first time, they began to glow. He raised his sword. The stone trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. A thin line of pale blue light appeared in the center of the door. Then the impossible happened. The door opened. Aldren stepped back and prepared himself for the enemy he had spent 40 years imagining. A beast, a demon, an army. Instead, a young woman fell through the opening. She struck the floor and did not move. The door closed behind her. The blue light vanished. Silence returned. Aldren stood with his sword pointed toward her. The woman wore a dark green traveling cloak torn across one shoulder. Blood stained the cloth beneath it. A small curved blade hung from her belt. She looked no older than 25. Not a demon, not an army, just one wounded traveler. Her eyes opened. She saw Aldren. Then she saw his sword. "Where am I?" Aldren did not lower the weapon. "Who are you?" The woman tried to stand, but pain forced her back to one knee. "My name is Mira." "Where did you come from?" She looked behind her at the sealed stone. "Ilvaren." Aldren had never heard the name. "What is Ilvaren?" Mira stared at him. Then she gave a tired, almost disbelieving laugh. "My home. That door has been sealed for centuries." "No," she said. "It has been sealed for 40 years." Aldren's grip tightened around his sword. Mira looked around the ruined hall. "Where are the soldiers?" "There are no soldiers." "The king?" "Dead. The cities beyond this fortress?" "Most are ruins." Mira became silent. Aldren watched her carefully. "What were you expecting to find?" She looked at him. "An empire." The rain continued above them. Mira told him the story she had known since childhood. Beyond the door of Ilvaren, she had been taught, existed a kingdom of conquerors, a kingdom hungry for magic. 40 years earlier, armies from that kingdom had crossed into her homeland. They burned villages, destroyed temples, killed those who resisted. Ilvaren fought back. Thousands died. Then the elders sealed the passage between the two lands. Aldren listened without moving. When she finished, he shook his head. "You are lying." "I wish I were." Edrenor was attacked. So was Ilvaren. The enemy came through that door. "My people say your army came through it first." Aldren stepped closer. "I watched my kingdom burn. And I grew up among the graves of people who died stopping yours." His sword rose slightly. Mira did not reach for her weapon. She simply looked at him. Neither spoke. Two people standing before the same door, both raised on opposite sides of the same story. Aldren finally lowered his blade, but only slightly. "You will remain here until I know the truth." Mira looked around the empty fortress. "And who will tell you?" Aldren had no answer. The following morning, he gave her food. Not because he trusted her. He told himself that several times. He gave her food because prisoners had to remain alive. Mira did not argue. For 3 days, rain covered the ruins. Her wound slowly began to heal. During that time, she told Aldren why she had crossed the door. Ilvaren was dying. For generations, its forests had been filled with light. Rivers carried traces of magic from the mountains. Crops grew even during winter. But after the passage was sealed, the magic slowly weakened. The forest became dark. The rivers grew cold. Children were being born into a land where the old magic existed only in stories. The door was more than a road, Mira explained. The old writings say it connected two halves of something that was once whole. Aldren sat across from her beside the fire. "And you opened it?" "Only for a moment." "How?" "My people spent 40 years trying." She looked toward the underground hall. "I found records beneath an abandoned temple. There was a sequence hidden in the symbols. And now, the door is dying. I may have been the last person to cross it." Aldren said nothing. Mira studied him. "How long have you been here?" 40 years, her expression changed. "You stayed?" "I was ordered to guard the passage." "By a dead king?" "By my king. He has been dead for 39 years. An oath does not die with the man who receives it." Mira looked at the walls around them. "No, sometimes it only buries him more slowly." Aldren stood and walked away. He disliked her. Or perhaps he disliked the questions that followed every conversation with her. For 40 years, his life had been simple. Guard the door, maintain the fortress, record each day, wait. The world beyond Kaer Morath had changed. Travelers sometimes passed through the ruins. They told him of new towns built beside old battlefields, of children who had never heard the name of his king, of forests swallowing royal roads. Some laughed when they learned why he remained. Others pitied him. Aldren preferred the laughter. Pity was harder to forgive. On the 5th day, Mira found his journals. 40 books, one for each year. Most entries were short. No movement, no sound. Door secure. Duty continues. She turned the pages slowly. Then she stopped. A symbol had been drawn beside one of Aldren's old military records. Mira called him over. "Where did you see this?" "On the banners of the enemy." She stared at him. "That is not a military symbol." "What is it?" "The mark of the Ilvaren healers." Aldren frowned. "You are mistaken." Mira opened the small pack she had carried through the door. From inside, she removed a piece of cloth. The same symbol was stitched into it. "My mother wore this mark." Aldren looked from the cloth to his journal. A memory returned. A village burning beneath a violet sky, Men in Edranoran armor dragging sealed chests toward the passage. A wounded stranger wearing that same symbol, kneeling beside one of Aldren's injured companions. Aldren remembered his captain killing the stranger. He had been told the man was casting a curse, but Aldren had seen the soldier's wound. It had stopped bleeding. That night, Aldren and Mira searched the fortress archives. Most records had been destroyed during the siege. But beneath a collapsed cabinet, they found a sealed iron box bearing the royal crest. Inside were military orders, supply records, maps, and one letter. Aldren recognized the king's seal. His hands trembled as he read. The first expedition into Ilvarin had not been defensive. Edranor had discovered the passage years before the war. The king had learned that Ilvarin possessed something his dying kingdom desperately needed. Magic that could restore poisoned farmland. Magic that could heal disease. Magic that could strengthen weapons. He had demanded access. Ilvarin refused, so Edranor invaded. The Ashen Siege had begun not with an attack on Aldren's kingdom, but with his kingdom attacking another. Aldren read the letter again, then a third time. At the bottom was another order. If the campaign fails, seal the lower passage. Assign remaining loyal guards. Prevent all movement and communication through the gate. Knowledge of the Ilvarin campaign must not survive the crown. Aldren sat in silence. 40 years. The words seemed to lose meaning. 40 winters, 40 summers. Friends had come asking him to leave. He refused. His younger brother had once traveled for 12 days to find him. Come home, he had begged. Aldren remained. Years later, a traveler told him his brother had died. Still, Aldren remained, because duty was greater than grief, because the king had trusted him, because the door had to be guarded. Now he understood. The king had not trusted him. The king had used him. Aldren threw the letter into the fire. Mira pulled it out before the flames consumed it. Why did you do that? Because it is a lie. You know it is not. Aldren stood. You came through the door. My command was to let nothing pass. Mira stared at him. What are you saying? You must go back. The door will not open again. Then we will find a way. My people are dying. That is not my duty. Mira's expression hardened. No, your duty is to a dead man who abandoned you. Aldren drew his sword. The sound echoed through the ruined chamber. Mira became still. For several seconds, neither moved. Then she spoke quietly. If you kill me, will the 40 years become meaningful again? Aldren said nothing. If you close the door forever, will your king become honest? His sword trembled. Mira stepped closer. You cannot choose what those years were. Another step. But you can choose what the next one will be. Aldren lowered the sword. Outside, thunder rolled over the dead kingdom. Then the fortress shook. Blue light filled the underground hall. They ran toward the ancient door. Cracks of light spread across its surface. Mira touched the stone. Her face went pale. It is collapsing. What happens if it does? The passage disappears. For how long? Forever. Aldren looked at the symbols. For 40 years, he had protected them. He had slept beside them, bled for them, grown old before them. Mira began pressing the symbols in the sequence she remembered. Nothing happened. The mechanism is locked from this side, she said. Aldren knew where. Behind the stone frame stood an old royal locking device installed during the final days of the war. Its metal housing was too strong to open by hand. Mira looked at him. Can you unlock it? Aldren stared at the royal crest engraved into the mechanism. No, the light in the door weakened. Then Aldren raised his sword. The blade had been given to him by the king on the day he received his final command. He had carried it for 40 years. He looked at the royal crest on his chest. Slowly, he removed it. The old metal emblem fell to the floor. Then Sir Aldren Vale lifted the king's sword above his head and struck the locking mechanism. Once, twice. The blade cracked. He struck again. The sword shattered. The lock broke. The ancient door opened. Beyond it waited a sky filled with fading stars. Mira smiled. Aldren stood at the threshold. For the first time in 40 years, nothing prevented him from leaving. Nothing except himself. He stepped through. Ylvarin was not a land of monsters. There were no armies waiting, no demons, no conquerors. There were farmers standing in dying fields, children watching dim lights float between dark trees, old people who remembered when the rivers glowed beneath the moon. Aldren helped Mira stabilize the passage. The old fortress records contain details about the locking system, while Ylvarin scholars understood the ancient symbols. Together, they restored what the war had broken. In time, people began crossing the door. Not soldiers, travelers, healers, builders. Families searching for relatives separated by history. The scattered descendants of Edrenor brought seeds from lands beyond the ruins. The people of Ylvarin shared knowledge that had survived on their side of the passage. The door Aldren had spent his life guarding became a bridge. Months later, he returned alone to Caer Marath. The fortress was quiet. Rain fell through the broken ceiling. His old chair remained beside the cold fireplace. His journals still stood in rows against the wall. Aldren took the final book. He opened it to the last unfinished page. For decades, every entry had been nearly identical. No movement, no sound. Door secure. Duty continues. He picked up his pen. For a long time, he did not write. Then he smiled. Today, I left my post. Beyond the door, I found no enemy. Only people who had been taught to fear us as we had been taught to fear them. I cannot reclaim the years I gave to a lie, but I will not give it another day. Aldren closed the journal. He left it on the table. Then he walked through the ruined halls of Caer Marath and stepped into the morning light. Behind him stood the door he had guarded for 40 years. Ahead of him waited a world he had never seen. He did not look back. And for the first time in his life, Sir Aldren Vale walked forward without waiting for anyone to tell him where to go.